Without Brock Purdy at time, without Ricky Pearsall, without Trent Williams, without Brandon Ayuk the entire season. Yep. And the way that Christian McCaffrey has put this team on his back and the utilization of him by Kyle Shanahan, strategically and schematically, it is the greatest year I've ever seen a play caller have. And
think about it. They got the Rams. The NFC playoff picture is Rams, Seahawks, Niners, Bears. Y'all telling me the Niners can't beat those teams? Don't do that, Shady. The Niners are capable of beating all of those teams.
You know, I think such a big part of playoff football, the teams that keep going, are the teams that are actual teams that constantly pick each other up. I don't know there's a better example than the 49ers all year long.
Okay, I know what you were all thinking. What do you mean the 49ers are a problem? A problem for whom? They've literally been lucky for most of the season. So are you telling me that a team that went 6-10, lost its starting quarterback early in the season, and watched its defense collapse to injuries before Halloween somehow ends up becoming one of the most dangerous teams in football? Yes, because in 2025, San Francisco flipped the script with a 12-5 regular season record, punching their way into the postseason as a wild card and knocking off the defending champs in the playoffs. Brock Purdy literally finished the year with 2,167 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, and a 100.5 passer rating, while Christian McCaffrey barreled for 1,202 rushing yards, 924 receiving yards, and 10 rushing TDs, giving the 49ers a multi-dimensional attack that few defenses could slow down. But it wasn't always like that. The real turning point wasn't a highlight play or a blockbuster move. It was a subtle shift most fans barely noticed, a recalibration of identity. By the end of this video, you'll understand why this version of the 49ers became far more dangerous than anyone expected, and why the rest of the NFC should have paid closer attention long before it was obvious. To understand how we got here, you have to go back to where it all fell apart, the 2024 season.
To be labeled a game changer, Brock Purdy has to be the best player on the offensive side of the ball. And that's not the case.
The 49ers staggered to a 6-11 finish, one of the franchise's poorest records in recent memory after years of sustained success. This wasn't just a disappointing year, it was a brutal organizational blow. A team that had been in the playoff mix and perennial contender was suddenly on the outside looking in. The injuries were historic. According to Sports Info Solutions, the 49ers have the fourth most games lost because of injuries at 206 games, with the value of those players ranking the highest of any team, more than any other team that year. Star running back Christian McCaffrey, the heart of the offense, missed the majority of the season due to early Achilles issues and a later knee injury. Brandon Ayuk tore his ACL and MCL in Week 7 and was done for the year. Trent Williams, Jordan Mason, and several other key contributors also spent extensive time on injured reserve, forcing depth players into major roles. On the defensive side, injuries and inconsistency turned what had been a strong unit into one that struggled to hold opponents, contributing further to the team's slide. Analysts and fans alike lamented that Kyle Shanahan's offense, once innovative and elite, looked stagnant and predictable, and many declared the 49ers' Super Bowl window to be slipping shut. But here's the thing about rock bottom. It's either the end of your story or the beginning of something else entirely. And what came next, nobody saw coming.
But let me ask you, do you think Kyle Shanahan, respectfully, and as good as the Seahawks defense is, and Mike McDonald, all credit to you, you think Kyle Shanahan will get owned like that again?
The offseason was supposed to be about damage control, but John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan made one move that shifted the trajectory of the team. They brought back Robert Saleh as defensive coordinator. Salah had led the 49ers defense from 2017 to 2020 before taking the Jets' head coaching job. On paper, it was a smart hire, but nobody could have predicted the challenges he was about to face. The 49ers weren't just losing players to free agency, they were losing the core of their defensive identity. Dre Greenlaw was gone, Tarvarius Ward and Talanoa Hufanga, both all-pro talents, were no longer on the roster. The reset was massive. Saleh didn't panic. He brought his all-gas, no-breaks mentality and began building a defense that relied on grit, toughness, and teamwork rather than star power. Then week 1 of the 2025 season arrived and disaster struck. The 49ers franchise quarterback went down with an injury, instantly raising questions about whether the team could compete. Conventional wisdom said the season was over before it started, but the backup quarterback, someone overlooked and underestimated, stepped in, refusing to let the narrative define the team. The backup quarterback wasn't supposed to be the story. He was brought in as a reliable insurance policy, someone who could manage a few games if the starter went down. But early in the season, when Brock Purdy went down with an injury, this quarterback did more than just manage. He kept the 49ers competitive. Game by game, the team stayed in the mix. Wins over tough NFC West opponents showed that Kyle Shanahan's system could carry a team even when the roster wasn't at full strength. The quarterback executed the plan, took what the defense gave him, and let the run game and offensive scheme do the heavy lifting.
He's playing with the backups. He had one day with the starters, and he was not as good as Brock. I'm not trying to create a quarterback controversy where there isn't one. I'm just saying that he's playing really well with the backups.
Over several starts, the 49ers remained solid in the standings, keeping the playoff hopes alive. The offense may have lacked a superstar passer, but it showed that Shanahan's scheme, precision, timing, and smart decision-making could thrive even with a backup at the helm. That monster of a season would define the team's resurgence. Christian McCaffrey was coming off a season that left many wondering if he still had it. After missing nearly all of 2024 with an Achilles injury, whispers started that perhaps the injuries were taking a toll, that maybe the 29-year-old had lost a step. But McCaffrey has always been a player who lets his performance answer the doubters. When the 49ers needed him, he became the engine of the offense. A versatile back who can rush, catch passes, and make plays in space, he provided a constant presence for a team dealing with injuries and quarterback uncertainty. When the offense struggled with banged-up skill players or an inconsistent line, McCaffrey's vision, agility, and ability to make defenders miss kept drives alive. He carried the load in critical moments, controlling the clock and sustaining the team's rhythm. What stood out about McCaffrey wasn't just raw production, it was durability and reliability. After the setbacks of 2024, he returned ready to play every snap, serve as the safety net for the quarterback, and anchor the offense no matter who was on the field. His impact went beyond the stat sheet. He was the heartbeat of the 49ers, making the team competitive in games that otherwise might have slipped away. Even when the starting quarterback returned, McCaffrey's role didn't diminish, it evolved, proving that in Shanahan's system, a versatile, dependable back can carry a team through adversity. Brock Purdy was back under center after missing several weeks with injury. The 49ers were 6-4, still alive in the NFC, still dangerous, but not complete. Purdy didn't just return, he immediately stabilized the offense. With his accuracy, decision-making, and command of the playbook, he put the 49ers in position to compete against tough opponents, even while the team dealt with injuries to key players like Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and members of the offensive line. Over the next stretch of games, the offense flourished. Purdy's combination with McCaffrey's dual-threat ability and George Kittle's reliability at tight end made San Francisco a nightmare for defenses. Shanahan's system, which balances the run and play action, amplified every advantage the team had. Even with an offensive line rotating due to injuries and skill position players missing time, Purdy adopted. Quick decisions, audibles at the line, and trusting his teammates helps the offense remain productive. This was a version of Purdy proving he could lead a team under pressure, not just execute a system. By late in the season, the 49ers were in contention to clinch the NFC West and a top playoff seed.
49ers, they have not lost in their first playoff game since 2001.
Everything they had fought for all season was within reach. And yet, as often happens in football, the margin for error was razor thin. The defense was supposed to be the problem all along. Losing elite players like Nick Bosa and Fred Warner would crush most teams, yet Robert Saleh refused to panic. With injuries to star players and constant rotation among backups, the 49ers leaned on depth and adaptability.
rookies and lesser-known players were thrust into meaningful roles, and Saleh's schematic adjustments, disguise coverages, and focus on red zone stops kept the defense competitive.
There's no Fred Warner. There's no Nick Bosa. You're playing with your 6th and your 7th linebacker. You're playing with backups on the back end. And to go into Philadelphia and win that game, it is the greatest coaching night of the entire season.
While the 49ers gave up yards more often than they would have liked, Saleh emphasized preventing touchdowns, forcing opponents to work for every point. The team made crucial stops in critical situations, keeping games within reach even when the offense sputtered. The pass rush and secondary had struggles, but Saleh's philosophy turned those limitations into manageable challenges. Depth players stepped up, rotations worked, and the unit as a whole stayed disciplined. By the end of the regular season, the 49ers defense had been a stabilizing force, helping the team remain in contention despite injuries. Saleh's ability to coach effectively under extreme adversity was a key reason the 49ers were a legitimate Super Bowl contender.
They're going to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. It's not going to happen. And sure enough, without Nick Bosa, without Fred Warner, without Ricky Pearsall, without Brandon Ayuk, and ultimately without George Kittle, your star tight end who got carted off the field in the second quarter with what would later be learned to be an Achilles tear, the Niners went on the road against the defending champions and with Brock Purdy, with Christian McCaffrey, with Robert Saleh's defense, they upset the defending Super Bowl champions, outscoring the Eagles 13-3 in the fourth quarter, by the way.
The 49ers did have something to play for, a chance at the NFC West title and a top playoff seed going into Week 18 of the regular season. But they lost 13-3 to the Seattle Seahawks, dropping them to 12-5 and knocking them out of contention for the NFC's #1 seed and a first-round bye. Their offense struggled badly that night, unable to sustain drives or score touchdowns, and the running game was bottled up by a strong Seattle front. Brock Purdy finished with just 127 yards passing, no touchdowns, and 1 interception in the game, while Christian McCaffrey managed only 23 rushing yards, signs of an offense that faltered when it mattered most. When the playoffs began, rather than enjoying home field advantage or a bye, San Francisco played on the road in the wildcard round, yet pulled off an upset, beating the defending Super Bowl champion Eagles 23-19, with Purdy throwing 2 touchdowns and Christian McCaffrey recording over 100 yards from scrimmage. So while the offense did struggle in that crucial Week 18 game, and injuries were a theme throughout the year, the 49ers still remained competitive and resilient, earning a playoff win despite those challenges.